Oh. So far with trig and SOHCAHTOA, we've been talking about how to find missing side lengths of triangles. Now we're going to move on to finding missing angle measures. Okay? So to find missing side lengths, we use sine, cosine, and what's the other one? Sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay? To find angle measures, we're going to use their inverses. Can someone tell me what an inverse is? What does inverse mean? You don't even have to think math. What does inverse mean? What? Like flipped, kind of opposite. So inverse of sine is going to be sine inverse. That to the -1, that means inverse. Okay, so what do we think cosine is going to be? Cosine inverse. And then what about tangent? Tangent inverse. Okay? I want you to label these. You use these three for missing sides. You use the originals for missing sides. You use the inverses for missing angles. So the original we've been using for finding missing sides. The inverses today we're going to find missing angle measures. Okay? But it's going to be solved the same way we were doing last week, just with inverses. So let's look at number 4. For every one, it wants us to find the measure of angle A. So we'll circle A on all of those. So related to angle A, what is 5? Opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? Opposite. Why is that one opposite? Because it's across from the angle. Okay. What about 9? What's 9 related to A? Adjacent, because adjacent means right next to. Yep. So now we come back to our ratios. Which trig ratio uses opposite and adjacent? Tangent. We picked tangent. Now we need to write the equation like we were last week to solve. Tangent equals opposite and adjacent. But what do we need with tangent? What did we normally put with tangent? We did put it over 1, but what did we put in parentheses?
The angle.
It was the angle. But do we know what the angle is? No. What do we use if we don't know something? X. Tangent of x equals, and then tangent equals opposite over adjacent. What's opposite? 5. We labeled 5 as opposite. What did we label as adjacent? 9. Okay. How did we solve this last week? Last week we had something that looked like tangent of 30 equals x over 9. We put it over 1 and we cross multiplied. But can we do that with this one? Why not? Right, there's nothing there. We don't know what this angle is. So if we're trying to find a missing angle, we need to use the inverse. So what that's going to look like is it's going to be x equals the inverse of tangent, which is tangent to the -1. And then in parentheses is going to be your trig ratio. So all we did was we took this and turned it into its inverse. Tangent inverse of 5 over 9. That's what you're going to type in your calculator. So get your calculators out. If you need to share with somebody, just make sure you're both watching and paying attention. You're going to hit second, or some of you it says shift. Hit second or shift, and then tangent. It'll pop up tangent to the -1 on your calculator. And then it should have parentheses set for you. Then type in 5 divided by 9. And then hit equals. Did anybody get an answer? It is 29.05. It wants us to round to the nearest whole number. So it would be 29. And then you're looking for an angle measure, so we need to label angles as degrees. Okay? Let's try number 5. So it wants us to use angle A again. Now we do what next? once we have our reference angle? What do we need to label? Label the sides that they gave us. So what's 17 related to A? Opposite. And then what is 20 related to A? Adjacent. If you're struggling with which one's opposite and which one's adjacent, what I want you to do is I want you to label the hypotenuse first, even if we don't use it. How do you know where the hypotenuse is always at? It's the longest side. It's across from that right angle. So once you have your hypotenuse, you can fill in your other two. Okay, but you should always know, without even looking, which one the hypotenuse is. Okay, so they gave us opposite and adjacent. What trig ratio is that?
Tangent.
Tangent. So we're going to use tangent. Now let's talk about how to set this up again. What do we always write first? Remember we're looking at this? What do we always write first?
The smaller number.
We use our trig first. What goes with our tangent? What normally goes with it?
X.
Normally the angle goes with it, but we don't know what the angle is. So I'm going to put X. And then equals, what does tangent equal? Right, opposite over adjacent, which is 17 over 20. Now how do I solve? We don't know X, which is the angle. So what do I have to use to find a missing angle? The inverse. Yep. So we have tangent inverse of what? 17 over 20. Type that in. I heard 40. Anybody else? It is 40. Okay, go ahead and try that last one on your own. So remember, take it in steps. We have our angle. What do I need to do after I have the angle? What do I need to label? Label the sides. What's 16? Opposite. What's 10? Adjacent. So now we pick which trig ratio? Tangent. Yep. So I take tangent of what? Of my angle, which is X, equals, what does tangent equal? Opposite over adjacent, which is 16 over 10. Since I don't know what the angle is, what do I use to solve? Inverse. Yep. Tangent inverse of 16 over 10. What do we got?
58.
X equals 58. Why is it 58 and not 57? Because you rounded. Yep. Questions about the inverse? Okay. Let's talk about these real quick. So here it says sine of A is 0.55. What is this A?
Angle.
It's an angle. What do we use to find angle measures? Inverse. So all you have to do is type in what's the inverse of sine. Sine inverse. Yep. And then type in 0.55. What do we get? 33. Yep. Which is what they got here. So go do B. What do I type in for B?
Inverse cosine.
Inverse cosine of,
48.
which is, yes. Okay, now someone last period asked a very good question. Why do they have that as a decimal? Okay, this is the same thing as saying 55 over 100 if that was our side lengths, but they just turned it into a decimal first. Okay, so if you're looking for an angle, you're going to use the inverse. Okay, so I did put those on your test.
Okay.
All right. Okay, let's talk about a couple more things. What I want you to do first on this is scribble out the variables that they gave you on those. We're not focusing on those today. Scribble out those variables for me that they gave you. Okay. On 13, we're going to look for angle A. On 14, angle E. And 15, angle H. So circle those angles. A, E, and H. Let's talk about 13 together. What do we do first? Label. What's 3 related to A? Opposite. What's 4? Adjacent. Yep. So which trig ratio is opposite and adjacent? Opposite and adjacent is tangent. Now we have to write our equation. How do we write the equation? What always goes first? Trig goes first, right? So tangent, what always goes with the trig?
X.
The angle, which we don't know is x, equals, on the other side it goes your ratio, opposite over adjacent, which is 3 over 4. I'm missing an angle. How do I find a missing angle? What do I use? Inverse. X equals tangent of -1 of what? 3 over 4. Type it in. What do you get for x? Round up to the nearest whole number is 37. Yep. Okay. So, on number 14, we're doing angle E. We need to label the sides. What's 4 compared to angle E? Adjacent. What is 6? Why is that one the hypotenuse? Because it's the longest side and it's across from the right angle. So, what do we need to decide next? What is it? Which one is adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine. So, now we need to write our equation using cosine. I picked cosine. What goes with cosine? The angle, which we don't know. And then what goes on the other side? What does cosine equal? Adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 4 over 6. I'm missing the angle. What do I do if I'm missing an angle? Use the inverse. So I'm going to have x equals what inverse? Yep, cosine inverse of 4 over 6. What did we get for an answer? Did everyone get 48? Do we all agree?
Yeah.
Yeah? Good. All right, last one on 15. Angle H. What is 5 related to angle H? Opposite. What is 7? Good, because it's across from that right angle. That's your hypotenuse. Which trig ratio up here uses opposite and hypotenuse? Sine. Good, so now we write our equation. Sine of x equals opposite over hypotenuse, which is 5 over 7. I'm missing an angle. What do I use? Inverse. X equals sine inverse of 5 over 7. What did we get? What is it?
46.
46. We all agree? Good. Any questions over inverses? Good?